In March, GB News was censored by regulator Ofcom over comments made on The Mark Steyn Show. That was for airing conspiracy theory claims about the COVID-19 vaccine. Ofcom found that the show made, quote, an incorrect claim when it asserted that the UK Health Security Agency data provided evidence of a, quote, definitive causal link between a third COVID-19 vaccine and higher rates of infection, death, and people being admitted to hospital. And now GB News is in hot water again. Naomi Wolf is an American journalist who appeared on Mark Steyn's show in October last year. We'll play you the claims she made now, but YouTube, if you're watching, we're playing this to be critical of it, so don't block us.
Mark, I'm Jewish, and I can say this. I don't think you're going too far. I think you're going exactly where you should go. It was the doctors in pre-Nazi Germany in the early 30s who were co-opted by the National Socialists and sent to do exactly what we're seeing kind of replaying now. It was the medical organizations in the early 30s who were emboldened to be the arbiters of, life worthy of life, life unworthy of life, and to kind of medicalize and pathologize dissent or difference. So we're seeing a wholesale purchasing of the medical establishment in the United States, in Britain, and in countries around the world to do things much more serious. But let me just give one example. You brought this up and you're so right. I have 3,500 experts at the War Room Daily Cloud, Pfizer Documents Research, volunteer effort, medical experts, scientific experts going through the Pfizer documents. And indeed, they're finding horrific harms against human reproduction. I'm not ashamed to say it at this point. I've got so much evidence. This is why I believe these are bioweapons, because they are literally sterilizing people. They're poisoning breast milk. There's not just mRNA in breast milk. There's polyethylene glycol now in vaccinated moms' breast milk. They're damaging the placentas of women so that they can, so that we're seeing chromosomal abnormalities, and they're emasculating men essentially. A mass murder has taken place, and it's not over. The evidence, you mentioned the drop in childbirth. There's a 20% drop in newborns being born around the world. There's a doubling of Scottish babies' neonatal deaths.
They're reopening one of the investigations.
Yes, I hope it's not a whitewash, but this is a massive crime. Of course they want to sweep it under the rug because mass murder has not just taken place, it's still taking place.
That was a lot. Wow. After receiving 622 complaints about that segment, Ofcom has found that GB News did not take adequate steps to protect viewers from, quote, this potentially harmful content. That's in breach of the broadcasting code, as Ofcom points out. It is important to stress that in line with the right to freedom of expression, broadcasters are free to transmit programs that include controversial and challenging views, including about COVID-19 vaccines or conspiracy theories. However, alongside this editorial freedom, the Broadcasting Code imposes a clear requirement that if such content has the potential to be harmful, the broadcaster must ensure that its audience is adequately protected. Because it's now the channel's second significant breach of the code recorded against GB News, Ofcom has called GB News in for a meeting. Very ominous. Last year, Mark Steyn left GB News after the channel wanted to make him personally liable for Ofcom fines. And Wolf has described Ofcom's finding as, quote, damaging censorship and a baseless reputational attack. So, Ammar, could this actually be the end of GB News being able to spout this sort of stuff?
I would like to believe so, but this sort of stuff is GB News' raison d'etre, right? Like, it's why it exists. It exists to put out this kind of insane and quite dangerous rhetoric out into the mediascape. And while it's important to recognize that this is obviously like mad, it's also important to remember that I think that the way that GB News is meant to operate within this like political and media ecosystem is that while not all of this insanity is going to make it to like the tabloids, not all of it is going to become, normalized right-wing or supposedly center talking points. Actually, quite a lot of it does, right? We're seeing this with the kind of hysteria around Drag Queen Story Hour that was kind of drummed up by the likes of Turning Point UK and people on GB News. Like, that's actually filtering through quite effectively into the political mainstream. Now, are GB News smart enough to start towing the line so that they don't get shut down? Maybe. But I always think, as funny as it is to laugh at just how far these guys are taking it, let's also keep one eye on the fact that they are actually having quite a dangerous impact on like far right ecosystems within Britain on the streets, and also as a result, tangible effects within political discourse and within communities too.
And I think that idea, it's the Fox News model, right? It's the move fast and break things. It's the, do whatever you want, ask for forgiveness later. I think that the reason it's a bit more difficult in Britain is that we do have Ofcom, which is this regulator, which isn't kind of the model that the US have. The US kind of have a litigation-based model rather than a regulation-based model. So that might explain why it's more difficult to, establish an outfit like Fox News somewhere here. But I also think that what you said there about the connection between sort of like the street movements and the kind of conspiracy theories and the misinformation that is driving those, and the framing, the dangerous framing that is driving those street movements, and what's happening in channels like GB News and their kind of various social media outfits that do get decent circulation, I think is a really important point. Also, what happened to Naomi Wolf? That's a whole nother conversation for another day.